ITV racing commentator Ed Chamberlin visited Johnny Murtagh and team to meet their new syndicate horse, Lord Rapscallion, for the first time during the week. And Ed, along with Horse Racing Ireland, is promoting horse ownership and syndication ahead of the exciting flat racing season, which, as you've been hearing, gets underway at Naas this coming Sunday. And I'm delighted to say that Ed joins us on the line. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for taking the call. Cheltenham was the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. How was it for you?
Oh, man. Cheltenham's something else, to be honest. It's like no other meeting during the year. It had everything last week. It had heartbreak, it had sadness, but it also had a lot of joy and elation. And it's the most intense week of the year. Royal Ascot's intense, but Cheltenham's on a different level, really. And you Irish gave us a hell of a beating during the week. You really did. Yeah,
we seem to have a bit of a knack for it now over the last few years. Before we get into maybe some of that, I just wanted to, because I think a lot of people over this side of the water as well would be very familiar with you and your name and your face from a very different sphere. So your background in racing, I read that your grandfather was a bit of a fan.
That's right. Back in the day, I used to sit with my grandfather and watch the ITV7, which is now back in business. And I always wanted to work in horse racing, if truth be told. But my career took a bit of a strange path. I worked as a bookmaker and then got into magazines and used to go on TV to promote my magazine, and Sky picked me up from there. So I then ended up at Sky in sort of early 2000s, I suppose, and worked my way up the ladder onto Sky Sports News and did the sport on Sky News. And then my world changed overnight in 2009. You'll remember with Andy Gray and Richard Keys and everything that happened there. And then I obviously got the job doing Super Sunday and Monday Night Football with a certain Gary Neville.
Yeah, an unbelievable gig, and you had a really good thing going. I think you were there for about 16 years. You had the live football, and as you say, you had come in after the previous regime. Monday Night Football, obviously a very successful product. What sort of must have been a difficult decision to give all that up?
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of people thought I was absolutely mad. When I told my 8-year-old son, he burst into tears and said, "What have you done, Daddy?" and you know, I get asked on the high street every day, you know, why did you give up Premier League football to go into horse racing? But listen, it was always a dream of mine to do it. As soon as ITV approached me, it's what I wanted to do. I love my job at Sky, don't get me wrong, and I realised how lucky I was. But, you know, sometimes in life you've got to take a risk, and to go into racing was what I've always wanted to do, and I don't regret it for a second. It's been an unbelievable 14 months or so, a seriously cool ride.
I don't want to dwell on your football career too long, but in terms of the Monday Night Football stuff, that's very interesting because to a certain extent it was quite revolutionary. As you mentioned, a few of the former broadcasters, there was a different element to that, certainly, to what we have now in Monday Night Football. And you were a key part of that, I presume. Was it you, was it producers, was it actually Gary Neville who was involved and sat down and was like, right, there's clearly a huge market here for intelligent football fans who want intelligent football pundits to tell them the deeper meaning of what's gone on at the weekend?
That's a really good question. Listen, it was a massive team effort, and everything you say there is right. We always wanted to be different, and on Monday Night Football we always wanted to be at the cutting edge and be innovative. I had a brilliant production team. A guy called Scott Melvin was the producer. But listen, I'd be lying if I didn't say that Gary Neville was absolutely at the heart of it. I mean, if you know Gary, he wants to be Prime Minister, he wants to be everything. He directed, produced, would have presented it if he could. I mean, he was incredibly hands-on. And people used to think, you know, we used to go on air at 7 o'clock. People, my friends, think he'd turn up at 6 o'clock and just chat about football. But what went into that show was unbelievable. You talk all week. We had a WhatsApp group going, discussing ideas. Gary very much at the forefront to start with. And then obviously Jamie came on board after a couple of years. And those guys were massively involved. And on the Sunday, we'd meet up after the Super Sunday game, discuss ideas, get into the office at sort of 8:30 in the morning, meet for a couple of hours, which for me as a football fan was fascinating because, you know, you'd be talking football and tactics and that type of thing and planning the show. And then we'd rehearse all afternoon from sort of 2 till 4 to get it right. And Gary Neville never had a note, you know. He was like Rain Man. He remembered everything. And he'd do things in rehearsal and he'd say, Gary, make sure you do that on the live show. And I'd have notes and my iPad and everything like that. But Gary never had a note. A phenomenon. And I think it's fair to say he changed football punditry with his honesty and his in-depth analysis. I think he changed. Even racing's affected by that now. You can't go on a show now in any sport and go through the motions. You've got to tell people at home something they don't know and be innovative. You really do. And I think he changed that single-handedly, personally.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's almost added a little more pressure onto the role of the broadcaster and to the pundit because suddenly the sporting fan woke up to the realisation that you can sit down and watch the analysis and really improve your sporting intelligence as a result of listening to somebody smart on the subject. So I guess you felt that when you were in racing as well, or working with any other pundit. I know Gary Neville sets a very, very high bar, but you do have to provide something now, not just entertainment, but a sense of education in an entertaining way, I suppose.
Spot on, absolutely spot on. That's what I'm always saying to my guys, be it Luke Harvey, Mick Fitzgerald, AP McCoy, Ruby Walsh, when we've had him on the show. You've always got to be telling people at home something they don't know. And that's where Luke at Cheltenham was so good down at the start, just explaining when a horse gets reshod or the way the start works, make people's ears prick up at home. Because in this day and age, unlike 10 years ago, there's so much information available to everybody via social media, the internet, that you've got to be different. You've always got to be different. And you know, the likes of Sir Anthony McCoy can tell you things that no one else can. Tactics in a horse race, that type of thing. And a lot of these guys take it for granted. But I'm always into them saying, no, use that. People at home don't know that. And hopefully, and I think they do it really well, they could always make people at home sit up and take notice.
Yeah, definitely Monday Night Football became a bit of a byword and still is for quality production, and as Eoin says, for the level of in-depth, I guess, analysis that you can do and sort of properly inform that audience. In terms of your Cheltenham experience, we did want to talk a bit about, you mentioned the balance of power there, Ed. The Pressbury Cup, it's become known over the last few years, it's become a bit lopsided. It kind of swung in our favour, I think, about 2013. By and large, it's remained that way. You spoke about informing the audience about tell them something they don't know. So why is it swung in Ireland's favour so much?
Listen, guys, you know how it works in sport. These things go in cycles and waves. And at the moment, the Irish are dominant, and fair play to them. Because it's a number of factors, really. The good horses are staying in Ireland, which didn't used to happen back in the day. They'd all be sold and generally come over to this country. I think we saw last week Ireland have got two absolute genius trainers in Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins. They are simply sensational. Plus, you've got those big powerhouses, Jigginstown, obviously JP McManus, Rich Ritchie, Simon Munir and Isaac Swade have got footpad, obviously, with Willie Mullins. And at the moment, the balance of power is very much with the Irish. And full marks to everyone who's made that happen, to the Irish authorities, the Horse Racing Ireland, everybody. But we'll be back. These things go in cycles. There's some great trainers over in this country, top horses. Don't forget, we won the Gold Cup, we won the Champion Hurdle, we won the Champion Chase. So it wasn't all totally one-sided. And in Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls and obviously Colin Tizard, who won the Gold Cup, we've got our own great trainers. It's just a cycle at the moment where the Irish are dominant. But from ITV's point of view and from racing's point of view, we need the Brits to hit back. We need next year to be more balanced for the sake of the sport, because we all thrive on competition, don't we?
Just before we leave that, Ed, how is that going to happen? Like, is this a handicapping issue? Is it to do with prize money? How is that balance going to get reversed?
No, I don't think it's anything that drastic, really. I think that's just the way sport operates. Ireland has a lot of really good horses at the moment, and that's not going to stop, because you look at the likes of Sam Crow, and I mentioned Footpad, presenting Percy. The novices, the next breed, the next wave look like they might come from Ireland as well. But there's plenty of money over here. There's plenty of big owners over here, and obviously JP's got a big presence over here. So I think it's just that's the way sport operates. Look at the Champions League. The British teams have been really poor for years, but now, having been dominant for many years, sort of 8, 9, 10 years ago, and now it looks like with Man City and Liverpool, whoever comes through that, could have a good chance of winning the Champions League. It's just the way sport works. And I don't think over here we need to panic about the handicapping system or anything like that. I think we will hit back, but we're having to weather a bit of an Irish storm at the moment, which is no bad thing, because those are beautiful horses over in Ireland at the moment, and full marks to those brilliant trainers that I've referred to. Yeah,
well, look, for what it's worth, we'd love you to win one, Ed, just to try and keep it interesting, keep it...
As if you mean that.
You mentioned some amazing trainers there, and obviously the main reason we have you on is to chat a bit about the flat season, which will start this weekend. It's Naas on Sunday, and I know Aidan O'Brien flung open the doors of Ballydoyle during the week and got into some nitty-gritty about some of his horses. 28 Group 1 wins in 2017. What is it about this guy? What is he doing that's so special?
He's a very special guy with a very special operation. I was lucky enough. I came over to the Dublin Racing Festival, which was one of the best things I've done in a long time. And the next morning, actually, when I went to Johnny Murtaugh's yard and met up with the HRI guys, which was great. And then after that, I went to Aidan O'Brien's. And to go and see him off-season was fascinating, just to get into how his mind ticks. And he's got a brilliant team, but he's a genius in his own right for so many different reasons. His attention to detail, his team management. I was amazed when I went round the yard, because I finished at Sky when Leicester won the league, and I had 6 months to immerse myself in racing. Everything from, what a member of stable staff does over here to the top, what happens at Coolmore and Ballydoyle. And I was just amazed by the way Aidan goes about it. His man management is phenomenal. He knows every single person's name in that yard. He knows, and he looks after them. And listen, those horses, those Galileos, are beautifully bred. But you've still got to train them right, place them right, get them fit. And the guy is just in a league of his own. He is unbelievable. And his attention to detail, when you're at a race meeting with ITV, you really notice it, from the travel to what he does at the race course. And he sets the benchmark so high. And he's going to be, 28 Group 1 wins last year. I had no reason why he would stop. But I think the measure of the man was that day I went to see him, and his recent interview in the Racing Post. He talks about his daughter, Anna, who obviously had that horrendous fall. And she was there that day. And to chat to her and what she'd been through was very moving, actually. And it just says it all, that he says, what she went through totally overshadowed him breaking a world record, because that's what the O'Briens are like. They're an amazing, amazing family. They really are.
Yeah, it's well worth digging out some of those pieces. He speaks about Anna's memory loss, and it's definitely something worth checking out. To wrap up, he had picked out as well over the course of the pieces during the week a bunch of his own horses to watch out for. I'm wondering if you've got any insight for us, but he's talking about Sioux Nation, Saxon Warrior, Amadeo Modigliani. What are you thinking in terms of, he's got such a range of horses across colts and fillies, etc. What are you thinking in terms of Aidan O'Brien, and maybe any specific horses or aspects of his yard that you feel that we should watch out for the year ahead?
So I think, I'm not so sure about the colts, to be honest with you. I think there's a bit of uncertainty, particularly about the 2,000 guineas. I personally like Elikam over here, the beautifully bred, a colt trained by Mark Johnson, a Frankel out of Attraction. I think the fillies he will dominate again, I think. I think Clemmy's the one who's very special. When she won, for Galileo to do what she did at Newmarket to win over 6 furlongs, you just thought, wow, if she can win over 6 furlongs, what's she going to do when they step her up to a mile? I think she could be absolutely different class. I know he said he's had a little bit of a hold-up with her, but he's still got 5-6 weeks to get that right before Newmarket. And I Can Fly is obviously an interesting filly as well, what he said about her. I think those fillies are just very, very special again. And they're going to get even better when you think we've got crops from the likes of Found just around the corner. It is an amazing juggernaut he's got there that it will be very hard to stop. But if you ask me to pin down one for the season from Ballydoyle, I'm madly in love with Clemmy.
Right, okay. Excellent. Cool. All right, Ed, listen, good to chat with you. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Not at all. Good to speak to you guys.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.